Right. What I want is more than 2 attempts.
Yes,
Like he gives up real easy.
Yes, that's
like,
it.
I mean, he's like, oh, and then she falls. And then it's like, okay, let me try the other side. Oh, no. And it's like, it's all right. I'm just going to float in this freezing cold water and die while you lay here.
I mean, you guys are right. I've spent more time like trying to get a tube right on the lazy river at Sunsplash than he did trying to survive.
Right,
Make an effort.
Come on.
Try.
Give me an effort, Jack.
Remember when we first met John McClane? Argyle picked him up from the plane and took him down the Nakatomi Tower at the Christmas party. And the terrorists were overzealous, but it was sweet when they killed Ellis. And with a little help from Alan, John McClane kicked ass.
Welcome back to Shat the Movies, the podcast where we answer the question, were the movies we loved when we were growing up really that good? Have you ever caught yourself thinking, why don't they make movies like they used to? Can you still remember spending your Friday night searching for the perfect movie rental at Blockbuster Video? Do you know what Blockbuster Video is? If you answered yes, then this is the podcast for you. I am one of your hosts, Gene Lyons, and alongside me are my co-hosts, Ash, Teach Me to Ride Like a Man, Dawson.
Hi, y'all.
And Big D, Dick Ebert.
Good evening.
And each week, we take a look back in time and decide if our favorite films still hold up. The movies we cover are chosen by you, the listeners, who generously commission the films you love. If you'd like to see all the movies we have covered, will cover, or want to choose one for yourself, please visit shatthemovies.com and have a look. At the end of each podcast, we'll provide you, the audience, with the number of wipes each movie would take to get off your respective butts. So thank you so much for listening. If you have not already, hit that subscribe button and share with a friend. That's how we help the podcast grow. Additionally, subscribe to our sister podcast, Shat on TV, where we review TV series such as Westworld, Lovecraft Country, Taboo, American Gods, Game of Thrones, True Detective, and Watchmen. Find all that information and past episodes at shatontv.com. And finally, if you'd like to hang out with us live, follow and subscribe to our Twitch channel, shatthemovies.com/Twitch, where we play video games, host watch parties, and have live edits. All that being said, Big D, what movie are we reviewing today?
Gene, tonight's an exciting, historic night for Shat the Movies. We have a crowdsourced commission. So this is coming from multiple Shat supporters who got together and said, we want to review a movie that is historically renowned. It's a blockbuster, and it is the anniversary of its theatrical release. So on this wonderful evening, the three of us are going to go back in time. We're going to win our ticket on the Ship of Dreams, playing some drunk Swedes and a hand of poker. We're going to break up a marriage. We're going to stand at the front of a ship and feel like the king of the world as we go back in time to review the 24th anniversary release of James Cameron's classic, Titanic.
Well, our commissioners read in and said, good morning, Big D. As requested, here are our thoughts on Titanic. Hope y'all enjoyed as much as we did putting it together. In honor of your first threesome, we felt that 3.5 sets of memories was suitable for this holiday Shat-tacular. For Agenda Forrest, Mike J. Hall, and Carlos Sarconic Pereira, this is Don Sauce wishing you all an early Shappy holidays.
And they also added a voicemail to share some of their thoughts and memories, so I'll play that for you now.
Hi Shat crew, it's Mike from London here. I remember seeing Titanic in the cinema as a 15-year-old lad with my 17-year-old big brother and our 19-year-old next-door neighbour. Looking back, it does seem strange now that 3 young men went to see an epic romance movie together. I can only assume we didn't know much about the plot, apart from the sinking bit, and were just swept along by the hype. I remember the evening the theatre was packed out and not having allocated seats, so we had to sit apart, which is just as well, as I was in bits at the end when Rose let Jack go, and I'm not sure I'd have lived it down. It's one of those films that if I stumble across it partway through, I'll be watching until the end. Now, I know this is a controversial point at Shat the Movies, but I love long films. If it's good, I have no problem with the 3-hour sitting. So please, no adding extra wipes to that. I guess that all that's left to say is, Mr. Lyons, take her out to sea. Like stretch her legs.
Hey Shat crew, it's Jen in Hawaii. Titanic is one of those rare movies where I can recall exactly where I was when I saw it in the theater. It was an awful blind date scenario. The only other time I've attempted that, I ended up marrying the guy 15 years later. So, hi Patrick, I love you. The date was awful. Neither of us wanted to be there. I don't remember the movie at all. We parted ways, and as soon as the guys left, my friend and I immediately went back to the box office, bought 2 more tickets, and watched the next showing, and we loved every minute. It's a really fun memory for me, and I'm excited to be a part of this group commission. Thank you, Don Sauce, for putting this together, and Sarconic and Mike J. Hall. This is going to be a fun one for the time capsule. Even though the movie is long, maybe you'll talk more. Yay. Thank you, Shat Crew. Always appreciate you guys. And like Celine Dion's heart, we all hope that you will go on and on.
Hello, Shat Crew. Marcus here, aka Sarconic. I have a bit of a hate story against Titanic. I had to watch it twice in a row. First with some friends, since we didn't have anything to watch, and after with my then girlfriend or my wife, Tanya. First watch, I felt it was extremely boring and I almost fell asleep like 3 times. Second watch, well, it was one of our first dates and I didn't have the courage to tell her that I had watched it before. Sorry about that. So I had to watch something I didn't like again, so now I hate it. Side note, she also didn't like it, kindred souls and all. This movie is a good visual experience, great photography, good acting, but damn, it's overrated. The plot is bland, boring, and the most told story ever. And get on the damn door, you butt love. Both of you would fit, just let her be on top. Did she smell so much you would die instead? And I love James Cameron, but how could he be part of this movie? Sad face. That said, the Shat must go on. I am proud of being part of this joint commission. Thanks Don Sauce, Mike Hall, and Jen Dafoe for allowing me to be part of this.
Hey, this is Don Sauce. I've never seen Titanic.
This is fantastic.
What is
Where's my dog?
Go forever, Shat Crew.
Okay, so that was not us.
No.
As someone who edits audio, I'm blown away and so proud of our listeners. That was great.
So many thoughts going through my head. One is, I think for the rest of the podcast, I'm just going to refer to Jack Dawson as butt love from now on. But secondly, man, like I don't need to have a wake or a funeral now. That was it. And they've now set the bar for like the last ever episode of Shat the Movies. Like someday we're going to have to, hang up our mics, hang up our headphones. And how the hell are we going to outdo that?
I think we just released that clip. That will be our final release. Just that.
You guys are incredible. I'm so touched. I seriously, I'm choked up a little bit. I got a little teary-eyed during that, which is going to set the tone for the rest of this podcast because, this one.
Wow.
Well, Titanic is a 1997 epic romance and disaster film directed, written, produced, and co-edited by James Cameron, incorporating both historical and fictionalized aspects. It is based on accounts of the sinking of the R.M.S. Titanic and stars Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet as members of different social classes who fall in love aboard the ship during its ill-fated maiden voyage. Production on the film began in 1995 when Cameron shot footage of the actual Titanic wreck. It was the most expensive film ever made at the time, with a production budget of $200 million. Nominated for 14 Academy Awards, Titanic tied All About Eve for the most Oscar nominations and won 11, including the awards for Best Picture and Best Director, tying Ben-Hur for the most Oscars won by a single film. With an initial worldwide gross of over $1.84 billion, Titanic was the first film to reach the billion-dollar mark. It remained the highest-grossing film of all time until James Cameron's Avatar surpassed it in 2010. A 3D version of Titanic, released on April 4th, 2012, to commemorate the centennial of the sinking, earned an additional $343 million worldwide, pushing the film's worldwide total to $2.195 billion, and making it the second film to gross more than $2 billion worldwide after Avatar. Big D, Ash, we always ask about your memories about the movie we're covering. Tonight, it's Titanic. Ash, what do you remember?
So much like Jen, this is a movie that I remember seeing for the first time. I was not big on a lot of like mainstream films starting about the time that this came out, but there was something about Titanic that just completely sucked me in. And I think it's because I've always been a sucker for a big sweeping blockbuster as long as it's not done by Michael Bay. And so this one got me. I was 14. I loved the whole romance of a ship, right? Like I think ships are really sexy. And this whole idea of like a star-crossed love. And come on, who didn't love Leo at this time? Like he was so iconic at this time point, and I just thought he was the cutest thing ever. So my friend Kathleen Boyd and I, we saw this the opening weekend, and I think we probably went back and saw it at least another 8 times while it was in the theaters. We loved it. I still do. Whenever it's on TV, I watch it no matter where it's at. It's one of the few like commercial mainstream films that I adore, but I was beyond ecstatic to do like kind of like a Shat treatment on this movie. And I'm pretty excited, guys. I hope I don't cry tonight because this one gets me weepy.
Yeah, to anyone who's listened to our latest string of films, I think there's been some question as to whether Ash and I have hearts or can be touched emotionally, whether we're just too cynical to appreciate mainstream film and the emotions that are supposed to be brought out by these directors. I think this episode should set things straight. This movie came out when I was deeply in love with an Irish Catholic girl named Erin Sheehy. Red hair, pale skin, and I fell for her while seeing her in a play at Seton Catholic High School, which was across the street from my shitty public school. And from the get-go, like I saw us as Jack and Rose. I'd never seen the movie, mind you. I just knew what the characters were all about. She was a year older than I was, and then she left for St. Olaf while I was still in high school. So she's away at college. I've decided I'm going to lose my virginity to this girl. So I'm waiting, and she goes off to college and loses her virginity in college. So after that, fuck it, all bets were off, and I started banging away. But we kept in touch, and I knew that although I had had sex with someone else and that Erin was far, far away, that she was the only person I wanted to watch Titanic with. And so years later, this movie kind of became the only thing I had left, like second to marriage. I was saving it and saving it and saving it. And I actually didn't see it until I was 30 when she had finally married, I think twice at that point, and I was ready to move on.
So this came out my senior year in college. And for people who are younger, I want to give you a little insight into what the buildup to this movie was. Everyone assumed this was going to be a fucking disaster. The idea was ludicrous. Everybody's like, you're going to make a movie about Titanic? Everybody knows what it is. The pre-buzz, it was awful. The film was 6 months late, $100 million over its original $100 million budget, and it was 3 hours. The first time I saw a trailer to this in the theater, people laughed because it was dead serious. It was the James Cameron, the shoot of the wreck, and it was like this voiceover, like trying to emit, this emotion of a timeless love story. The crowd laughed. Everybody thought this was going to be a Waterworld type fiasco. So we went to see it sometime shortly after it came out and just fell in love with it. And yeah, I remember it because afterwards, a lovely classmate, Jen, and my roommate, Pat, who had a hand in the Miracle on the Hudson Landing, the three of us went home and had relations. Now, I don't know if Titanic had anything to do with it, but I remember this film for the wonderful experience it was. And it was just a great memory. And this movie, I think, holds up well.
So for Jen, Mike, Sarconic, and Dawn Sauce, and all the Shat listeners out there on this anniversary of Titanic's release, let's hit the trailer.
Titanic was called the ship of dreams. And it was. It really was.
All right, open your eyes. We go full ahead. Put your backs into it.
Got everything I need right here with me. I figure life's a gift, and I don't intend on wasting it. You never know what hand you're gonna get dealt next. You learn to take life as it comes at you.
When this ship docks, I'm getting off with you.
In 1996, Brock Lovett and his team search the wreck of the R.M.S. Titanic. They recover a safe they hope contains a necklace with a large diamond known as the Heart of the Ocean. Instead, they find only a drawing of a young nude woman wearing the necklace. The sketch is dated April 14th, 1912, the same day the Titanic struck an iceberg. Rose Dawson Calvert, the woman in the drawing, and her granddaughter are brought aboard the Keldysh, and Rose recounts her experiences aboard Titanic.
So I kind of alluded to this in the beginning that this is a blockbuster, and there's a big difference between just a movie and a big blockbuster. And it's clear from the get-go that this is the latter. This is real Hollywood filmmaking. And I don't know, I still get really excited when the real ship that they're seeing turns into the new one. I get chills, I get goosies. You know, you got the big score that comes in and it feels almost like a ride. Like I think when a blockbuster hits in the right ways, it feels sometimes like a physical experience as well as a mental one. And I know we're going to get into some of this about special effects tonight, but thinking about this being 96, I thought when it transitions and they're going through and like the doors all of a sudden come back and then the wood fixes itself and then you pan back and it's this big giant ass beautiful ship. I thought it held up and I thought it was a great start.
I think we should use the word epic. This movie feels epic. It feels old Hollywood.
And perhaps it does, but I'm sorry. I started laughing when we got the first view of Titanic in port at Southampton. The CGI, I get it. It's a long time ago. That's no excuse. Like, they still chose to use it. It's so terrible. And then everybody in the movie keeps saying things like, it's such a big ship. Would you look at the size of that ship? I half expected someone to just flat out say, man, what a year, 1912 in England. I hope that ship makes it to America. And they just keep pressing the era, right? Something Picasso. Oh, look, it's a Monet, just his use of color. Like, Cameron's intent is so telegraphed to tell us a couple things. This is a big boat. Everyone's very excited about it. And it's 1912. It's just embarrassing. Like, we don't need to do this. We know when the Titanic was. We know what it was. And they're just showing off and failing miserably.
Oh, Gene, my young friend, you're showing your age. You're spoiled by modern CGI and the CGI you remember as a kid. I remember what fucking bad CGI is. Okay, this won the Academy Award for Best Visual Effects. It is easy to create spaceships and dinosaurs and liquid Terminators. All that shit's easy because it's something from your imagination. But when you're creating objects that you interact with every day, that shit is hard. When we get that sweeping scene, the opening that Ash said gave her kind of goosies, with the flyover of the ship, it's going in and out. You're meeting the crew, some of the passengers. I felt it. I could tell it wasn't real, but I felt this was as high quality as I had seen. And I remember watching it in the theaters and being blown away.
When I think more so than that, I think it's the way that Cameron matches such attention to detail with like the CGI that, yeah, I mean, it does look a little bit dated, but I think that there's never been a movie project that he's done that is more just like lovingly like realistic, because I get he is being a little heavy handed with the dialogue. But I mean, guys, this ship is gorgeous, and everything down to the sets, like with the way that they did the plates to the curtains. I mean, he researched everything and made it look as real as he could, as, you know, completely a replica, like this historical like little moment as he could. And I think it's beautiful. And I don't know, it made me want to get on the Titanic, even though I knew it sank.
But the two of you are conflating two different things. The sets are fantastic. The attention to detail is wonderful. The way that they're marrying all of this together cinematically and artistically is great, but you didn't have to do what he did with the CGI. If I were the director in this film, I'd take a look at it and say, not good enough. This isn't good enough. And focus on the things that are strong, right? They start from the end, like in Father of the Bride, and that's smart because we can get shots of real world exploration vessels. We can get, you know, underwater Titanic is a lot easier to simulate, right? And use real footage there. And they take us through the ship. And Big D, you're right. The tour of all those items and places that'll come to mean something to us, that's gorgeous. The piano, Hockley's quarters, the strongbox. Like, as I'm seeing all this, it's haunting already. And it was the first time. Like, it's not because I'm remembering watching this movie and all the things that would come later. It's the first time I saw it, I still felt that. And all those feelings came back to me. These are some like Saving Private Ryan level goosies coming on. But my problem is the fact that they chose to do those big shots with the CGI, it took away from the quality of everything else they were doing.
Yeah, but I think they're trying to start out the movie with some historical perspective and some lighthearted characters. Brock Lovett, holy shit, Paxton. This is Dr. Bill the Extreme Harding from fucking Twister. He is corny. It's payday, boys. Or when he's talking to himself and he's got the camcorder and he's like, it still gets me every time to see the sad ruins of the great ship sitting here where she landed. 2:30 in the morning, April 15th, 1912, after her long fall from the world above. I was laughing, but it's Bill Paxton. You got to give him a pass.
Yeah, but I don't know. I do think that what's maybe the reason that this all gets me with it starting with just like it being just absolute desolation to the beauty is, I don't know if you guys have ever seen Phantom of the Opera, but this is exactly how Phantom of the Opera opens because you've got, he's at the auction and then he finds the music box and they play the music. And then all of a sudden the chandelier, goes up and then the theater, is transformed into what it used to look like before the Phantom destroyed it. And that works. Andrew Lloyd Webber, I think he's kind of a tool, but that scene works so much in Phantom of the Opera, and it works here. And you've got Bill Paxton. Is he cheesy? He is, but like he's that typical guy that's going to get on and do his narration all seriously because he really buys into it. And he sounds like one of the guys on National Geographic, those documentaries you watch, Big D. He sounds like every single one of the people who narrate those.
He does. But Cameron, I think, purposely did this because Cameron was one of the people who was out there when they found the wreck. He pushed to have it explored, to get cameras down there. And people were against it. There was an uproar. This was like the ground zero. The people treated this like this was a sacred site. This was a grave site. So they were upset that Cameron and other people were exploring the site. So Brock's team, when they go on TV and you hear the reporter saying, people are upset, you're destroying priceless artifacts, this is a sacred grave, that is a shot at Cameron himself also. And Brock is a character, dude. I got to tell you, even though he says they have museum-trained archaeologists and they're working on the wreck, they're going to guarantee to preserve the artifacts, that's bullshit. That's bullshit. Brock's team, they yank the safe up. Woo! Payday, boys. They throw it on the deck. They get a grinder out. They just grind this fucking safe open. Everybody's popping champagne. They rip the door open with a chain. Is there an archaeologist there? No, you got Brock sticking his dirty ass hands with no gloves, like taking paper that could have been like sacred documents, and he's meeting them like he's doing like a pizza, like it's dough. He's just looking for that diamond. They're fucking right. They're preserving shit. Without the diamond, they don't care about history.
First of all, he's not a surgeon. It's not a live patient. I don't know why he'd have to wash his hands to touch something that's been under the ocean. But also, it's not a 3,000-year-old sarcophagus. It's like an 80-year-old strongbox. Like, what do you think's going to be in there? It's fucking money and a diamond. But it's all because Rose needs to redeem their souls. Like they have to start off as these money grubbing looters, and they're basically pirates because Bill Paxton has an earring. It's James Cameron telling us, like, look at this guy. But in the end, it's the whole point, and I'll get to this at the end of the pod, of how she's changed them and she's softened them, and everybody's in her grasp as she tells her tale because she's changing their understanding of what the Titanic was. It's no longer a treasure hunt. The treasure that they found was the friends they made along the way.
It's the narrative. It's the stories that they couldn't tell. Because you got your guy. I love the dude that like creates the CGI and like he's all dramatic. He's like, and then her big ass is in the air, and then popped a couple times, and I mean, he's so fantastic. And she's got to soften him. It's all sport, and then it's like these are real people with real lives.
God, could you imagine that dude narrating 9/11? That'd be incredible.
Jesus.
Yeah, it's called fucking Pocket Change. It's on YouTube. Google it.
Oh, no.
Oh, God.
Shat the Movies does not endorse whatever the fuck Big D's talking about. Just
please.
Saying.
No, I think it's one of those conspiracy theories, like about like it was a government inside job, and the guy narrating it is the one who's like, boom, it hit the ground. And she's like, it was very different to experience it that day.
All right, I'm doubling down. We do not endorse this video. In 1912 Southampton, 17-year-old Rose DeWitt Bucator, her wealthy fiancé Cal Hockley, and Rose's widowed mother Ruth board the Titanic. Ruth emphasizes that Rose's marriage to Cal will resolve the family's financial problems and maintain their upper-class status. Meanwhile, Jack Dawson, a poor young artist, wins a third-class Titanic ticket in a poker game. After setting sail, Rose, distraught over her loveless engagement, climbs over the stern railing, intending to jump overboard. Jack appears and coaxes her back onto the deck. The two develop a tentative friendship, but when Cal and Ruth strongly object, Rose acquiesces and discourages Jack's attention. She soon realizes she has feelings for Jack.
I want to make very clear, I love this movie and I love this love story, but I think someone has to say, especially at the beginning, Rose is pretty awful, right? Like, I get it. Cal's an asshole. You got a hard life because you got to marry Billy Zane in a really bad wig, but she's kind of insufferable. She's whiny. She's annoying. And she just lets Jack take the fall here. It's this complete foreshadowing what's going to happen when she hogs the infamous store. I think like we can see from here, like you're going to let him fucking die, right? But that aside, I also get Jack's perspective because y'all, Kate Winslet in that red dress with all that beading, she is exquisite. But Jack would have been better off falling for somebody else, you know?
I was looking at it from a totally different angle, Ash. I agree with everything you said, but Rose is also supposed to be this like independent, smart woman. And the movie just keeps oscillating wildly between who she is and what she's all about. Like she seems to have these very forward-thinking ideas on the roles of the sexes and the roles of class, the roles of money. But at the same time, like she's talking to Jack and he mentions that the water is going to be really cold. And she's like, cold? Like how cold? Like she doesn't fucking realize the ocean is cold. She lives in England. She counts every lifeboat on deck and realizes, I did the math and there aren't enough. But she never thought to like look over the bow of the ship on her own. Jack takes her up there and she's like, oh my God, there's a front of the boat? It feels like Rose is only independent and intelligent as a plot device for men. It's just how she contrasts with Billy Zane, how she contrasts with Leonardo DiCaprio.
But what the hell exactly does Jack see in Rose? I understand it's a challenge. You know, we have stereotypical Irish cast member who goes, she's well out your range, man. You'll never get her. And then his Italian friend will say something like, bastardo, you know, something ridiculous. So it's a challenge for him. But she's not interesting. She's not strong. Jack has had more experience and traveled the world. He's teaching her. Rose is a stick in the mud. I don't understand why you'd like her. She's small-minded and boring.
It's pretty.
I was about to criticize your calling them stereotypical Irish and Italian characters. I was like, they have names. They're Tommy and Fabrizio. And then I was like, oh shit, he's right. They are stereotypical Italian and Irish characters. But, you know, speaking of how good looking everybody was in this movie, and Ash, you alluded to it, Leo. Fuck, like I forgot what an absolute babe young Leo was. I'm so used to his current look, and that's not bad. Like he's a very handsome man, but I'm thinking like when I think Leonardo DiCaprio, I think Wolf of Wall Street. Like I'm thinking of, you know, Inception, even like going back that far. But you forget like also when he was in his 20s, my God. But young or old, like he has this energy that makes everything in a movie more exciting. People overuse the term dynamic. He is that dynamic. It's like injecting a drug into this movie. The first hour of this movie, it goes by in a blink of an eye. And it's because of him. When he's on camera, everything's just moving. And then we get that clock scene. He's at the top of that first class dining area. And he's in that borrowed tuxedo at the top of the stairs, standing at the clock, waiting for Rose. And he turns around and wow, like he's Gatsby, he's Romeo, and a romantic lead does not get any better than this specific moment in this specific film.
I can't separate Jack from Leonardo DiCaprio himself. Like the young Leo, he is Jack. He's genuine, he's caring, he's honest, he's likable. He is everything a guy could be. He's everything I want to be. Jack is fucking smooth. He always comes up with a line. You think he's this dumb, poor kid who's going to get embarrassed by the wealthy elite. No, every situation he's ready. He makes kind of like an offhanded comment to Rose who gets offended. And he says, no, you just seem like kind of an indoor girl. He can always diffuse a situation. When you put him at that elite dinner party, you think he's going to get chewed up. Molly thinks he's going to get eaten up. And he just has them in the palm of his hands, talking about his life, his travels, his experience. He gets them at the end to do a toast about enjoying life. He's downstairs dancing with that little girl. Even that little girl gets jealous. She's not sexual at all. She's looking at him and he says, Cora, you're still my best girl. And he takes her to the front of the boat. Finally, we get to close her eyes. She gets up there. She spreads her arms. He takes her hand and they do the I'm flying bit. He could have seduced me. I would have left my fiance for him.
So what you're saying is it's not so much that Rose isn't highly intelligent. It's more like she's just playing along because, oh, fuck, it's Leonardo DiCaprio. Like, I mean, yeah, go ahead, make me an angel, whatever.
Exactly. That one-legged prostitute. They weren't just friends. Come on, Leo's a man of the world. He knows what's going on.
What I think is really funny that I had forgotten about, I had just recently rewatched Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet, and like Leo totally made millions of dollars based off of his hair falling in his eyes and how sexy he was. Because in that movie, there's the scene with the fish tank where he looks so fucking good and his hair falls in his eye. And then in this movie, twice, there are close-ups of him, and then like just suddenly his hair will fall in his eye, and just the entire theater. And like, still, I'm 38 and I'm just like swooning, like going like, I just want to brush it off his forehead. Like, I mean, he's so hot in this, guys.
And they know, because in that first flash of him sketching her, like before we actually see the sketching scene, Rose has a flashback, not like a Batman Mask of the Phantasm flashback, but just a subtle flashback. And we get that flash, and it's the eyebrow. And then just like that hair, and you're like, oh, yeah.
And those baby blues.
Yeah. I mean, if we're done sexualizing this poor young actor, I wanted to say that I had come into this fired up because I love documentaries. Anything Titanic, I've watched them all. I was going to recommend the definitive special that was on, I think it is Nat Geo, or I was going to recommend the Based on a True Story podcast that covers Titanic, which is a wonderful podcast. Please subscribe. Based on a true story. It's wonderful. But we have to separate. I'm not going to talk about the real world stuff. Cameron famously took liberties. But if we look at this in Cameron's timeline, okay, we're in the multiverse now. In Cameron's timeline and in Cameron's like telling of Titanic, I think that Jack actually causes the sinking of the Titanic. Now, give me some time here. By winning the ticket in that hand of poker, Jack gets on the ship he wasn't supposed to be on. He can then interfere with Rose's attempt to kill herself. She probably wouldn't have, but I think she would have slipped the dress. She would have gone overboard. She is a first-class passenger. They would have stopped the ship. They would have looked for her. The course of history is changed at that point. They're going to go back, look, and then it gets even worse towards the end. Jack and Rose, they return to the deck. They're frolicking. They're giggling. They've just had sex. They distract the two lookouts at the crucial moment that they could have detected the iceberg. So in some weird way, I think this timeline, Jack caused the Titanic to sink.
Big D, in this butterfly effect world that you're creating, you could apply that same logic to nearly any character. If Jack's friends were better conversationalists, Tommy and Fabrizio, the Irish and the Italian, like if they would have been better conversationalists, maybe he never would have seen Rose's cherry red hair in the sun, and then he would have missed her, and then none of this would have happened. Or if the English didn't enjoy tea so much, maybe the captain would have contemplated less and gone with his gut and refused to use all the boilers for full steam. So many things could have made it not hit the iceberg, but it was destined to.
And also, an iceberg isn't like a passing ship in the wind. Like, the iceberg was still going to be there. Like, it was still going to be in their path.
No, but in Big D's defense, they just grazed that motherfucker. Like 30 seconds more, a minute more, and they could have maybe dodged. In James Cameron's world. Yeah. In James Cameron's world.
Yeah, maybe they could have been like, hey, look, it's an iceberg. But instead, they're looking at these two running around the deck like idiots. They were probably like, what the fuck are these two doing? In that crucial moment. Come on.
And maybe if they had women in the crow's nest, they would have been paying more attention to the ocean instead of pounding their pud while watching Kate Winslet and Leonardo DiCaprio.
No, come on. Women and machinery don't match.
Maybe if the two guys in the crow's nest weren't so homophobic, they could have just satisfied each other and then been more alert. Rose brings Jack to her stateroom and pays him to sketch her nude, wearing only the Heart of the Ocean necklace. They later evade Cal's servant Lovejoy and have sex in a car inside the cargo hold. On the forward deck, they witness the ship's collision with an iceberg. When Jack and Rose return to warn the others about the collision, Cal has Lovejoy slip the necklace into Jack's pocket to frame him for theft. Jack is arrested and handcuffed to a pipe, and Cal puts the necklace into his overcoat pocket.
Kate Winslet famously almost drowned in this movie in the hallway scene where they're trapped and they're trying to get out the gate. She was terrified, trapped for real. And it took her a while. Like, she talked about she had like PTSD from it. And I think that while not everybody almost drowned like she did, one of the things that I think Cameron does really well in this movie is that he made his actors really uncomfortable. He kept the water pretty cold. He, made sure that they were uncomfortable and submerged most of the time. And I have to say, these internal scenes where they're in the hallways and the water's coming in, I find it really, really frightening. I have a deep-seated fear of drowning after riding out hurricanes and like water coming in really, really fast. And it's the same type of slow panic that I imagine the people on the ship felt, because the water doesn't just like rush in and like, grow 15 feet, 20 feet in a minute. Like it keeps coming and you never know when it's going to stop. And these people must have felt like that absolute fear of knowing that it was only a matter of time before it goes under. And I think it's really effective. And I was surprised by how frightened I still was, knowing what was going to happen, knowing the inevitability. That anticipation is really, really, really tense.
And that's exactly what I'm talking about with my less is more theory on the CGI. This stuff that you're talking about, Ash, this is all you need for this movie. Like, we could have just stayed on set pieces and practical effects and made a perfect movie. These parts, when they were going through the hallways, when they're in the the inner chambers of the ship below deck, they looked amazing. And this part of the movie will hold up forever. You can show this movie 50 years from now and it's still effective.
Yeah, and if you've never seen the making of this movie, that entire rear section, Cameron's crew built in dry dock. All those water scenes, all the end of the movie with the ship going under, that is real. Kate Winslet down in the bowels in the hallway, that shit is real. You can't fake that. And Gene, I think that's true. But I think you don't give the movie credit enough for the merging of the two. But those interior scenes are fantastic. They're amazing. But you can't talk about Titanic, and I know we've swooned over Leo, without talking about that naked sketch scene. That is probably one of the most famous. It's memes. It's everything. You see just that charcoal, and you know what it is. But Leo cannot draw. So those hands are actually James Cameron, who is an accomplished illustrator, drawing it. But if I could talk about the scene itself, that scene is extremely erotic. There's no sex. There's no touching. Jack is very professional. But I cannot imagine how aroused that Rose was in that robe. She's dropping it. He's having her position her hand on her thigh and her head. And you're seeing Jack. He's getting nervous. He's kind of shifting in his seats. And I'm thinking this is the most erotic thing that this girl has ever had. And then old Rose quickly, yep, she admits it. My heart was pounding the whole time. It was the most erotic point of my life up until that point. And just think of the balls on Jack. You're seducing a married woman in a first-class cabin. How do you know that they're not going to come in?
First of all, she's not married. She's engaged. They're going back to get married in America.
Well, that's what I meant.
But I have to say, like, forget Jack, like the balls on Rose here, right? Because I think that everybody knows, like, there's always that little bit of like, nervousness before you have sex with somebody for the first time, because like you're going to see them naked and they're going to see you naked. And it's okay because like you're kissing and stuff and touching, but like she's just like laying it all out there for him, right? Oh. And that takes a lot of guts, especially somebody who's clearly like a virgin. And I think this is super hot. And I'm just curious, have either one of you ever done this, right? Like, have you ever posed for a drawing or have you ever posed for photos? And I don't mean like a dick pic, right? Like, I mean, where like you posed for like professional or like, somebody doing artsy photos or a drawing like this, because it's kind of sexy.
I think the closest is I did like a Tennessee Williams one act in my underwear.
Wow.
But God, no. Like, I've been to a bar when they were like sketching a nude model and I felt awkward like for her. And this is going to sound incredibly, sexist or whatever, but just as a guy, I look at my own body and I'm like, yeah, nobody needs to draw all of this. It's like a Rube Goldberg machine that should have just been wiped out evolutionarily.
Yeah, I know it sounds sexist, but I think the female form is much more attractive.
So much better.
So much better. But I kind of half-hearted, because we had Lovejoy, the manservant. He's on it. He's tracking her through the ship. I kind of wish he would have like offhand just noticed a wet spot on the couch and been like, oh, come here.
That's gross.
It was there. Are you kidding me?
She had a robe on. It was under the robe.
Oh my goodness!
What do you think happens to women's bodies when they're aroused? Like,
I think a young girl in that situation with Leo, he's been working up to it. I think there would have been some physical evidence.
I think Big D just inadvertently revealed what he does to women. Like, just they look at him and just.
I wish.
Well, but I do have to say, like, there was a lot of controversy when this movie came out too about, Kate Winslet's body type, because at the time, like, she wasn't your traditional body type. And I think all that's total bullshit, because Leo's a babe, but y'all, like, Kate Winslet, like, takes my breath away. Like, she looks like a porcelain doll. When she gets wet, she's even somehow prettier. And I don't mean wet like you mean, Big D.
Yes.
I mean water wet. And I think that she just looks perfect. And, like, I remember being 14 and, like, I didn't have, like, real boobs yet. I had, like, kind of, like, starter boobs. And I remember watching her and, like, oh, my God, like, I hope that's what mine eventually look like, because they're perfect. Like, she's got perfect boobs. And I know that it's a whole controversial thing, but she does. Like, they're perky and they're beautiful, and she's got these cute little nipples, and, like, they're just, I love Kate Winslet.
And not only is she absolutely beautiful in this scene, but she's also a different kind of leading lady than we've seen typically in the 90s at this time, because we all misquote the character and misquote the scene. We do it all wrong. Everybody who does it the wrong way. And I'm just guilty of it too. When we do it, we do this like breathy voice and we go like, draw me like one of your French girls, which says like, I'm so smitten with you, Jack. Draw me like one of your French girls. That is not how Kate Winslet delivers this line. She is far more assertive. She says it with power and freedom. It's a command. She's saying, draw me like one of your French girls. And it's a very different intonation. It's a very different scene. And she gets it. I mean, talk about understanding the assignment. She knows exactly who Rose is, exactly the change she's undergoing, and exactly what the scene needed. It's perfect.
Well, she's a paying customer. I think she slipped him like a nickel.
It's a dime.
So she knew her place. But going back again, showing my age here, at the time when she was cast, there was an issue about Kate Winslet's weight, that they wanted her to lose weight to get the role. Cameron mocked her on the set. He called her Kate Weighs a Lot. And it's shocking because the chemistry between Leo and Kate, it is fantastic. They were both young actors, and they're the sole reason this movie works. Yeah, it's a great story. Yeah, the special effects. But without these two, these young actors hitting it off, the movie's not the same. So getting them was a stroke of genius.
And this romance is so captivating that we can accept it existing in parallel with a ship sinking.
Yeah.
Now, normally in a movie, we'd be watching this and be like, why the fuck are you having sex when all this shit's going on? Like, granted, they happen in the sequence of they fuck and then they hit the iceberg. But point being that typically you want to separate these two things out, that they just have no place in the same movie. But this works. And as we shift from the romance for a moment to the actual incident, the thing we've all been waiting for, the Titanic striking the iceberg, I am so in love with these characters and so in love with the world that's been built that I'm fucking rooting for the crew and the Titanic, knowing how all this ends. Like, every time I watch this movie, I'm hoping they can avoid the iceberg, or maybe they patch up the ship. Maybe those bulkheads hold. There are good people and pretty things you're going to ruin. Ash, you talked about how gorgeous this ship is. I'm like, no, it can't sink. Like, it's too perfect. It's such a beautiful place. Let's just save the Titanic this once. And I really would have been okay, 100% okay, if in the movie they're like, actually, everybody made it okay to New York. Ta-da!
Yeah, give me like an Inglourious Bastards like alternative ending, right? Where like what we want to happen does, where Jack and Rose, ride off into the sunset together. And I, like Eugene, have seen this movie so many times, and I am still devastated when they hit the iceberg. Every death, every loss, the old couple on the bed, the mother reading the story and telling the story to her children, knowing her children are about to drown with her. Like, y'all, like, I feel it every time. But the one that gets me the most, that proves that my heart is not totally made of ice, is the fucking string quartet. Because when they finish playing and the water's coming in and the guy looks at them and he knows he's about to die, and he says, it was the honor of my life to play with each of you, and they all nod and hug, and then they're about to drown. Like, y'all, I want him to live. Like, I just want him to live once.
Fuck, I wish I was that good of a person. I would be running around, shoving people off the deck, trying to get on the boat. I would be doing anything. Like, I wouldn't be pushing kids off, but for them to have that stoic, that just to be that strong of a person. It makes me jealous and angry. I know. Would you two sit there and play, or would you be thinking about your own lives?
So I know for a fact that I would, because I've been in this situation where I thought I was going to die before, because we rode out the storm in 2005 and the house, like half of it got ripped off and like tornadoes were dropping everywhere. And we were convinced that we were going to die because we watched this house get like sucked up into another tornado with people that died in it. And like, we just like, there were some people in the house that were just like praying and like going crazy and like tearing their hair out and going nuts and scaring the kids. And then there's like my dad and I, whom we just like mopped because we were just calm, because what else are you going to do? Right. Like, I think that, you know, I think you'd be cool, Big D. I think you'd be like that.
But you weren't doing like an inspired dance routine to try to raise the spirits of the people in the house.
I was, though. I was trying to keep everybody engaged because we had a 3-month-old and a 12-year-old and a 15-year-old. So I was telling jokes. I was singing. I was being very calm. Ha.
I don't know about me. I don't know.
No, maybe if it was on a boat, though, because I'm really terrified of open water. So if it was on a boat, it would be different.
I like how Big D's like, I don't know about me. You joined the fucking army, dude.
Yeah, I think that's true. You don't know when until you're in the situation. Yeah, you're probably right.
You literally did the thing where you're like, I am going to put my life on the line.
That's true.
For other people.
But in his defense, and something like that I think I'm maybe hypocritical about too, is I wasn't there with my children. I think that makes things very different, because like if I knew that something was going to happen to us, I don't know if I could be that mom that was just calm and putting her children to bed. I would be like fighting to get my kids on those boats, right? Like I'd be like tossing them off the side where they like fell in and they couldn't do anything about it anymore. You know, I mean, I would die, but I would be nuts until my kids were safe.
Yeah, Gene, I think you're 100% correct. I didn't think of that. I remember in basic training watching the videos of like chemical weapons and the effects and how to mitigate them. And I looked at my friend next to me. I was like, we volunteered for this.
Yeah.
So maybe I would have been playing.
With the ship sinking, Rose flees Cal and her mother, who has boarded a lifeboat. She finds and frees Jack. Cal and Jack urge Rose to board a lifeboat, and Cal falsely claims he can get Jack safely off the ship. As her lifeboat is lowered, Rose, unable to abandon Jack, jumps back on board. As passengers fall to their deaths, Jack and Rose desperately cling to the stern rail. In the freezing water, Jack helps Rose onto a wooden panel buoyant enough for only one person. Rose is saved by a returning lifeboat, but Jack, still clutching the panel, has died of hypothermia.
So in a world where we are striving for gender equality,
oh my God.
I am far from a social justice warrior, but I found myself not a little upset, but questioning the women and children first. I understand kids. You get the kids out, their lives, they have more time left. But why are women more valuable than men? Why are men's lives worth less? You know, I don't get it. I think there's a line between chivalry, like opening a door for a woman, or the things you do for women that you treat them differently. But to me, women and children first is sexist, isn't it?
Yeah, I recently listened to the 99% Invisible podcast, and they talked about alphabetical order, how it just kind of came about because they're like, what's the default order for stuff? Like, you got to come up with something, right? And I think that it's kind of the same thing here, like barring any sort of ability to interview every single person and survey them on their life, you know, you got to go with what you know at the time. And in 1912, men, they're more likely to have physical stamina. And I'm not saying because men are naturally stronger than women or have more stamina, but rather at 1912, like the things a man was allowed to do versus the thing a woman was expected to do, the men would just generally have more stamina, a shorter lifespan, and possibly like an education in swimming and the know-how to offload more boats. Like, no, I mean, it sounds funny, but like you had to learn to swim in 1912. Like not everybody was able to do it. So it just makes sense. Like if you think about it, you get the women and children off first so that the men can continue offloading more boats and have a chance at survival. Plus women and kids are likely to live longer and reproduce. Like it's a hard fact of life that it just makes sense at the time.
I mean, I don't know. I also think like the time period too, like the women were the people who took care of the kids. So, you know, you're going to have the guys go on there and leave the women on the boat. I mean, like they're the ones who are the caretakers. So if the kids are going, which I think we all can agree, children need to get on those boats, then the moms go with them. It's just the way it goes. But I do have to say, Rose gets on the boat and it's always annoyed me that she jumps off of it. right? Like
Yeah.
she gets off of the boat, she
Dumb.
becomes a problem again. Jack now has to figure out how to save her again. And in any other film, I'd be like, I'm adding a wipe because this character's dumb. But this is Titanic. And when Jack runs to her, and again, the score, you guys, you've got that beautiful score. It's the instrumental of My Heart Will Go On. You've got the fireworks going off, which I know are flares because they're dying, but they look kind of sexy and romantic. And then he runs and she grabs him. And then it's the way that Leo delivers this line. He grabs her face and he's so angry, but he's so relieved because he knew he was never going to see her again. And he's so relieved and he just grabs her and says, "You're so stupid, Rose." But like he says it with so much love. And guys, I get choked up every time because of the relief and the anger and the love that he feels for her. And he knows now that, yes, he's going to die, but they're going to die together. And there's something beautiful in that. And y'all, this movie killed me. I cry so much.
Yeah, I'm watching that scene. I'm like, that's so Rose. Like she's on the boat on her way out. She's like, gotta jump back on and endanger everybody in this boat.
Yeah.
And nobody else is getting in that boat. It's not like they can bring it back up and load another person. She literally just took a spot that could have been somebody else's. Is like, nah, fuck it. I'm getting back on the boat. But yeah, that alternating kissing and grabbing her face and telling her she's so stupid. Like, if you want to know what unconditional love looks like, if you want to know what a helpless situation looks like, and when you boil those two together, this is what you get. And it really do be like that sometimes. There are moments in our lives where you grab somebody you love by the head and say, "You're so stupid," and then kiss them at the same time. It's a beautiful scene.
But man, one thing I didn't remember was this movie, it takes a fucking hard 90-degree turn. Or, yeah, it turns, it's all right, 45.
Yeah, 90 degree.
Yeah.
A 180 is a flip around.
Yeah.
90 is a turn left or right.
So this movie has a fucking hard turn. It goes from a love story, a historic tragedy, to Rose to the rescue action movie. Jack is trapped. Yeah, the water's rising. She punches a crew member who won't help her. She grabs an axe. She's going to, I'm going to try to break the chains on those handcuffs. She's practicing. She misses, but yeah, she gets it on the first try. Jack and Rose running down the hallway. Here comes a giant wave. No, we got time to save a young boy in the hall. That's him. Hockley, I'm going to get my gun. I'm going to run around the Titanic like a fucking madman. I'm going to start shooting down at the clock and the big staircase into the water. It turns into a fucking huge gun chase. Titanic is not this movie. This isn't Jerry Bruckheimer's action cheese fest. I think this ruins the movie. It derailed it. You didn't need it. There's enough tension without a gun chase to get to the lifeboats to make this movie work without changing genres.
Listen, even Shakespeare had sword fights. I mean, shit happens, right? But the axe thing, you're absolutely right. I'm watching this scene. I'm like, she got it on the first try. Like she didn't accidentally cut him or miss. I mean, I've tried to use an axe, a sledgehammer. It's not super easy if you've never done it before. But when you think about it, Big D, from a filmmaking perspective, it can really go two ways. Like she nails it on the first try. Hey, we're all happy. Like they get to kiss and hug and everyone's surprised. It could happen. There's a puncher's chance. It could happen. Or what's the alternative? She fucks it up. Leo's bleeding out while drowning, right? And I guess the third path is that she can't do it. They drown at the Master-at-Arms quarters, and the movie ends before the 3-hour mark. I guess that works.
How about she finds a fucking spare key in that drawer with multiple keys? Yeah, it's a handcuff key.
I know, but there's like 500 keys in there. Like, what do you want instead? Instead of like a really cool, she cuts his handcuffs, you want like a 15-minute segment of her going through all of the keys to find the right one?
Well, listen, you have no problem later on when they're again action sequence. They're stuck behind a locked gate, water's rising. He picks up a key ring with like 8 keys on it and somehow gets the magical right key, inserts it, and unlocks the gate.
So we're agreed he couldn't use the key trick twice. You get to use the key once, Big D. You can't do it twice.
Okay, so take out the gate.
I didn't know that she was going to hit the handcuffs. I thought the idea was to just chop into the pipe. And then I'm like, oh fuck, it's the handcuffs? Okay.
Yeah, both are bad ideas.
Let's cut his arm off. Party on.
It'll work.
And talking about survival, we finally get into the ocean. We've heard so much about how cold the water is going to be. And I don't know if you guys have ever done ice baths, like a polar plunge, but recently a lot of my friends have been investing in ice baths. And these things cost like thousands of dollars. They claim that they help with recovery from workouts or fights or injuries. I've even heard one friend who does regular plunges. They say it helps prevent aging. I tried this shit one time, and it was just my leg. I rolled up my pants to like the knee level. I put my leg in there. That shit hurts. Like when Jack says that it feels like 1,000 knives stabbing you all over, that is the perfect description of being in incredibly cold water. And I'm not saying it's the worst way to go, but I did, Ash, you were talking about the sympathy you felt for every person who died in this movie. I felt fucking terrible for all these poor people who survived that initial sinking, right? And then they just have to endure this painful death and are helpless to fight it.
Yeah, but I will say, so as a dancer, I had lots of these instances. And this one time I pulled my groin muscle and my quadricep muscle all at the same time. And so I had to do these ice baths all the way up to almost like my waist, right?
Thanks, Tom.
I was 17. I didn't know Tom then. But I had to submerge my leg and like it fucking hurt when I first put my leg in there. But after about 45 seconds, it goes completely numb and you can't feel it anymore. So that's the one solace here, right? Is they had like a really painful like minute and then they feel nothing. So, and he looks really pretty all frozen.
He looks like he's the lead singer of My Chemical Romance.
He does. Oh my God.
But I want to address something I think that everyone who's watched this movie brings up. Mike brought it up in his epic voicemail. Why not just get on the headboard? Why couldn't they both get on it? So Mythbusters tested this. They were doing movie myths. They built a replica. They got the specs of the headboard, and it would not work for Rose and Jack unless if they had taken their life jackets, put it under the headboard, they both successfully could have ridden the headboard out. It would have been above the water, and they both would have survived. So this could have worked if they had thought ahead.
No, man, this is like an Oh Happy Dagger moment, man. Like, this is like Mythbusters watching Romeo and Juliet and being like, well, would the poison have actually like killed somebody? It's a simple... It's a part of the tragedy, man.
What, that Rose couldn't have moved over? Jack could have been like, hey, let me try to get up there.
Do you want them to just have a smaller door? Would that make you happy?
No, I would have tried to problem solve.
Yeah,
hey,
what I want is...
both live?
Right, what I want is more than 2 attempts.
Yes,
like he gives up real easy.
Yes, that's
like, I mean, he's like, oh, and then she falls. And then it's like, okay, let me try the other side. Oh, no. And it's like, it's all right. I'm just going to float in this freezing cold water and die while you lay here.
I mean, you guys are right. I've spent more time like trying to get a tube right on the lazy river at Sunsplash than he did trying to survive.
Make an effort. Come on.
Try. Give me an effort, Jack.
The R.M.S. Carpathia rescues the survivors. Rose hides from Cal and gives her name as Rose Dawson when she arrives in America. Still wearing Cal's overcoat, she discovers the necklace tucked inside the pocket. Flash forward to the present, Rose takes out the heart of the ocean that has been in her possession all along and drops it into the sea over the Titanic wreck site. Beside her bed, her photos on the dresser depict the life of freedom and adventure. In a dream or the afterlife, young Rose reunites with Jack at Titanic's grand staircase, applauded by those who died on the ship. So at this point in the movie, all of my instincts are trying to fight it, but I can't help but cry. Like, I get that there's so much wrong here, but I don't care. I don't care about the fact that they had Fabrizio and Tommy, that they brought them back after like 2 hours of irrelevance and then wanted us to care about them. I don't know why Jack didn't get a life jacket when he's supposed to be like this cunning survivor and literally every other person on the boat has one except for Mr. Guggenheim. And I even doubt that Rose's idea of heaven would be aboard the Titanic with the ghosts of the only people she liked. But again, you see that flash of her. I don't know if it's a dream or an afterlife. Leo is at the top of the staircase turning from the clock, and Ash, it comes full circle. It's exactly what you said. This is Hollywood magic.
It is. And I cry every time because it's like, she's finally there. Like, it makes no sense because I am not this person, right? But of course, this is her heaven. Like, this is the moment of her sexual awakening. It's the time she became a real person. It's this perfect, like, moment of life, for her. And it's not just Leo. It's when all those fucking people who died applaud for them. And I have to say, when I think about it, I know she went on and she married somebody else because clearly she has a granddaughter. So she found, quote unquote, won't love again. But I think there's like those special loves. And like, so if like Tom died tomorrow, God forbid, I would probably, I don't know if I'd ever get married again, but I wind up with somebody long term again. But when I died, I would hope to see Tom and not that person.
Yeah, I think you know how that marriage went by the fact that she has no photos of him on her bedside.
Right, it's just like, her and a horse.
Me with a horse. Me with an airplane.
And a roller coaster.
Yeah.
but you have to admit, I mean, come on, Big D. The tears come every damn time, right?
Oh, I think it is. And I think it's the performances that pull the tears, because the actors they're just emoting. And when you get the old Rose, you can't help but feel she's out there. She's brought every item she owns to that ship because she knows she's going to die there. She knows she's going to die where she should have died all those years ago. So yeah, it's emotional. It's a well-told story. And that's what a great movie does. It pulls emotions. This is a tragic event. It's a historic event that we know, but yet we're crying. Gene's wishing the ship doesn't sink. We're questioning whether heaven is, the grand staircase. That's what a movie should do. And this movie does it because it did it for the three of us. And there's almost no movie that we agree on.
Yeah, but then Rose has to go and fuck it up. Like she goes to the edge of the boat and she just throws the heart of the ocean in the water and goes, oop. I wanted to punch her in the fucking face. Like, this whole crew listened to your story. They bonded with you. And think about them. Like, Bill Paxton, all he wants is nothing more than to find this one thing he's been searching for his entire professional life. This would be the find of a century. It would fulfill. It would be their story. It would be the way their heart goes on. And just, oop. And we can tell by Rose's bedside photos that she's kept her promise to Jack. Like, we get that. That's the point of the movie, right? She's lived this life that involved travel and piloting aircraft and lots of other activities that look like they cost serious money. My assumption this whole time had been that she had taken the heart of the ocean and like sold it on the black market. And that's what allowed her to have this adventurous life and to explore America and to have no. She somehow found good fortune because Rose, everything always comes up smelling roses, I guess. And her ass just kept this thing as like a trinket and then throws it back in the ocean. Fuck you, Rose.
No, I mean, what I always pictured happen is that she goes and she finds her mom and she gets like her family money because her mom dies. And even though she's not like upper class, like clearly her family still has money. Like they're not just like broke. They're just not going to be upper class anymore. That's what I thought happened. That's how she rode the roller coaster and put her toes in the ocean.
And learned how to ride a horse like a man.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now is the time when we give our wipe scores for Titanic. The Shat score is our way of telling you how many wipes this movie would take to get off your respective butts. 0 wipes is a perfect movie. It is Kate Winslet's boobs. And 5 wipes is an absolute disaster. It is dying of hypothermia. Ash, we'll start with you. What is your score for Titanic?
So I often complain about long movies. I often complain about movies that make a love story just so that people become interested in their film. I often complain about star-crossed love stories, but for some reason, all of those things don't bother me here. I think that they work. I loved this 3-hour movie. It felt like an hour and a half movie. It didn't feel like a 3-hour film. The love story is really beautiful. It's cheesy, but not too cheesy. It makes you feel things. The story of Jack and Rose is doomed from the start, but like when you have your own young love, like you root for them anyway, and you cannot help. I would really hold anyone's feet to the fire to say that they cannot help but feel the feels when the music and the drama swells up in this film. Like you have to. It's so good. It's not completely perfect, but it's pretty damn near close. And for me, this is a 0.5 wiper. I loved it. Thank you to our commission crew. It was beautiful.
I agree that this is a movie that does give you the feels, but there is an irony here. A movie about the hubris of man in creating an unsinkable ship displays the hubris of man in thinking computer graphics in 1997 can replace the real thing. The CGI in this movie is worth a wipe in itself. It is horrendous. And not just the CGI, but the blatant attempts to show it off just make it worse. Like this felt like a movie made for 3D. They would look over the bow of the ship. Oh, look at that. how many times can we watch a body fall overboard or the Titanic chunk its way through the water? We didn't need to see these perspectives. It looks like a bad episode on the History Channel. Like, there's a point where Leo's looking at the sky and they didn't even use a real sky. It was fake stars. If they'd curbed that and stuck to just the on-stage drama, Titanic would be a perfect movie. But all cynicism aside, this movie does set out what James Cameron envisioned. Just like you said, Big D, they personalized the tragedy of the Titanic by making it a love story. And I feel like I've wasted so much of my life not loving like Jack and Rose. Like, if a movie can make you feel that, it's fantastic. I spent an hour after watching this movie watching Sarah sleep. The next day at breakfast, like, I couldn't help but notice every little thing she did. And then I was doing weird shit like kneeling on the sofa next to her and just looking at her in the sunlight. Like, if a fucking love story recharges your heart like this, it's a damn good movie. So for me, it's one wipe.
You fucking sat there stalking her, looking at, and you're giving it one wipe. That makes no sense. The movie changed you. Okay, so you're commenting on the CGI. Oh, this is, you think Cameron was doing this to like just puff his chest and show what he could do.
Yes.
He was trying to put us in the experience, make us understand what had happened in 1912, to let us feel. We were like the crew on the salvage ship. He wanted to teach us this was not a forensic experience. This was an emotional story. And to show you how much that Cameron actually cared about this story, every time there was an error or a problem poked in his story, he went back and fixed it. Neil deGrasse Tyson famously said, the star field above Jack was not correct. He sent him what it would look like. Cameron installed the correct CGI star field for the Atlantic on the night of the sinking. That's how close he was trying to get to accurate.
Yeah, but he couldn't resist making everybody's breath digitally enhanced to make it look like, oh, it's so cold.
No, I'm just thankful you gave it one wipe. I don't need to defend this movie. It is epic. It is what Hollywood's about. This is a 0.5 wipe movie. It's not perfect, but it's pretty well damn near it. And it is something. It is, how did they make it? Why did they make it? How was it so successful? You can't answer any of those things. It is a 0.5 wipe movie.
Mm-hmm.
All right, with half a wipe from Big D and Ash and one wipe from Gene Lyons, this comes out to 0.6 repeating wipes for Titanic.
So Gene, with a score of 0.6 repeating wipes, that now ties this in the 25 spot with Die Hard, Groundhog Day, Good Will Hunting, The Fugitive, Interview with a Vampire, and Bull Durham.
I feel like that's a good place for it.
I still can't believe Groundhog Day is that high up in our Shat catalog.
Do you not remember? That movie is fucking good. That movie
I hate that movie.
That movie was one. Oh, Gene, I think, Gene, you're the only one who hated it. You gave it a 2 wipe.
I hate that movie. I wasn't on that podcast. I would have given it at least a 3.5. So I hate that
trash
movie.
Bill Murray. That's pre-Rushmore Bill Murray.
Yup. Which means useless Bill Murray.
All right, Big D. I can't believe we're even doing another movie after doing Titanic, but we got to keep on keeping on. What's coming up next?
Well, Gene, we're going to go from epic to something very different. We're going to take a step down the ladder of Hollywood movies. After getting fired from their job at the electronics store, Bones and Jack signed up for the U.S. Army Reserve, hoping to make a little money with a minimum of responsibility. What the hapless pals don't realize, however, is that Libya has just invaded Chad. So Bones and Jack are quickly shipped off for service. Now these slackers turned Army recruits are getting lost in the Sahara and engaging in armed combat with the Libyan forces. This was commissioned by one of our wonderful supporters, Jen D. I love her. Came out in August of 94, and this is not Titanic.
I love that Jen went from Titanic to this. So this is, I mean, it's the only strand that I can find that connects these two movies.
Right.
It's Jen.
From Kate Winslet and Leo DiCaprio to Pauly Shore and fucking Andy Dick. Guys.
Well, I think this is just an all-encompassing thank you for giving us joys like Titanic and other movies. Thank you, commissioners. That concludes this week's episode of Shat the Movies. Be sure to follow us on social media and share with a friend. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, and Instagram at Shat the Movies. You can email us, host@shatthemovies.com. Support the podcast by shopping our Amazon affiliate link, buying our merch, or commissioning your own movie. Find all the information by visiting our website, shatthemovies.com. Also, you can check out our sister podcast, Shat on TV, where we review TV series such as Lovecraft Country, Westworld, True Detective, Taboo, American Gods, Game of Thrones, and Watchmen. Find all that information on our website, shatontv.com, where everywhere fine podcasts can be found, including iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and YouTube. Be sure to subscribe, and if you stop by iTunes, please leave a review. That helps the podcast grow. On behalf of my co-hosts, Ash and Big D, I'm Gene Lyons. Be sure to follow us next week for the following movie.
Pauly Shore brought history to life in California Man. He got a taste of life on the farm in The Son-in-Law. Now he's about to put his life on the line. Pauly Shore is in the Army now.
You will obey every order, grunt!
He's getting into shape.
Can I please throw up now?
Learning special skills.
Drop the pen, throw the grenade.
And proving the last thing the Army needs.
Let's go bust some scuds!
Is a loose cannon.
Suck on this at one time! Sorry.
Ah! Hey, give me push-ups!
All the way up and down, right?
Hollywood Pictures presents Pauly Shore.
Ow!
In the Army now.
Can I call you General Sweet Pants?